I have heard Mike speak twice, and both times I was amazed. It was informative, it was clear, it was entertaining, it was just fantastic. So last December I asked him to come here and repeat his wonderful presentation, a little bit focused towards data science, and it took us from December till now to arrange it. And I want to tell you one other amazing thing about Mike, which is he is the only New Jersey government official who responds to email within an hour. And he has proven this several times while we arrange things. So please take it away.
Thank you, Doctor. Save that for later. You may not be doing that. So I'm Mike Geraghty. I'm the state's Chief Information Security Officer. So if you have a driver's license, you pay taxes in New Jersey, you go to the hospital, you have health care, you have student loans or whatnot, all that information comes to the state, and I'm responsible for making sure that's protected and nobody else gets it. That's one of the jobs I have. So as the CISO for the state of New Jersey, it's the entire executive branch, Department of Treasury, Motor Vehicle Commission, Department of Health, all of those 24 major departments, 71 agencies. I oversee cybersecurity for that, and not just oversee, I'm responsible and accountable for it. The other part is I'm the director of what we call the NJCCIC, the New Jersey Cybersecurity and Communications Integration Cell. That is outward facing from state government. So that is all the schools, all the municipalities, all the counties, critical infrastructure, all the residents of New Jersey and the visitors, making sure they're safe. So the water that you drink, the lights stay on, the energy keeps going, all of those things. I don't have direct responsibility for that. Obviously, I don't work at PSE&G or places like that, but we provide services and we help them make sure they're secure. So that's it, and I have the best job in the state of New Jersey. Dr. Gell said I respond in an hour. We have a rule in the NJCCIC that you will respond in 24 hours to any call or email that comes in. That's supposed to be customer service. That should be part of government. So that's me in a nutshell. I did a presentation down at Rutgers. Dr. Geller was there, and I made a quip on one of my slides that cybersecurity is just really a big data problem. It's a data science problem. That's how I got stuck coming here today. He latched onto that, emailed me right afterwards, and so here I am. And I really think that, and I say that to all the folks that work with us in the NJCCIC at the state, it is a big data problem. It's a different way of looking at cybersecurity than what we've done in the past. And what we've done in the past has been wrong every different way we've done it, because we still have ransomware attacks, we still have all sorts of things happening. So we need a different approach. So this data science approach, I'm not sure if anybody knows who the Waterboys is. It's a Scottish band. They have a song out there called The Whole of the Moon. And as you can see, I only have a sliver of the moon that we can see, because in cyber, we never look at the whole picture. We don't collect all the data that we need. We get alerts from things that are signature-based detection systems, but we don't see everything that we need to see. We need to collect lots and lots of data to see the whole of the moon, if you will. And that's kind of the theme of what we'll be talking about. So some of the things I'll talk about is what the NJCCIC is, what we're doing. You already heard a little bit about that. What the threat environment is. What we're seeing on a daily basis, what the big threats are. And as we go through that, you're going to see where data intersects with that. And then you're going to see, toward the second half is I'm going to start talking about it as a data science problem and how we're approaching that. I was just talking to the dean. You guys are thinking of doing a cybersecurity major. And I said, well, I don't hire cybersecurity majors. I hire data science and computer science majors because I can teach them cyber. I can't teach them math and physics and all those other things, those first principles type of subjects that we have. So The NJCCIC, it's not just me in Homeland Security. We're organized under the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness at the state of New Jersey. But we also have embedded with us Office of Information Technology engineers. We've got state police detectives. We've got National Guard personnel. So we're located down in West Trenton on the campus of the state police. It's called the Regional Operations Intelligence Center. It's our emergency operations center. It's about twice as, our room is twice as big about this room. And we have about 50 people that are doing cybersecurity, not only internally, but externally, all those different things. We were created by executive order from Governor Christie back in 2015. I was hired in 2016 to be the first director of the NJCCIC and the state CISO. So I've been there just about 9 years or so. I'm only 29 years old. I just look like I'm 64. That's what cyber will do for you, so don't get into that. So it's real big. Back in February, okay, we published our 2025 threat assessment. Okay, this is what we see coming up based on what we've learned in the past, all the telemetry that we have, all the visibility into things that we have. And the key points, I won't read it. You can visit it. You can see it on our website, cyber.nj.gov. Incessant cyber attacks, okay? Anything connected to the public internet is being attacked day and night, whether you know it or not. And it's, if you're an ostrich and have your head in the sand, you probably don't know it's happening. But they're trying. They're jiggling the doors. It's like somebody going down through all these buildings day and night, just checking to see if the doors are locked or not locked. And some of them are doing a little bit better checking than that. No one is immune. Everybody has been hacked. In fact, the former FBI director says there's two types of companies out there: those that know they've been hacked and those that don't know they've been hacked. So you probably have people in your systems here at NJIT and elsewhere that have been there that you probably don't even know about. And we hear about the ransomware attacks just about on a daily basis. We respond to ransomware attacks on a daily basis. Really close relationship with the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA as they call them. And it's, the supervisory special agent for the FBI here in Newark on the cyber side is Michelle Liu. And if Michelle doesn't call me every night at 7 o'clock, my wife is kind of, oh, Michelle didn't call you. And so we're dealing with attacks just about every night and collaborating there. Threat actors with diverse motivations, okay, are attacking us. Most of it's financially motivated. So when we think of ransomware, that's a financially motivated crime. That's not anything new. That's been around since 1993 when all these professors went to a conference out in Hawaii. It was about AIDS and AIDS vaccines and cures at the time. And then there was one professor that gave out a floppy disk. I don't know if anybody remembers floppy disks. Gave it out. It had a malware on it that locked up people's computers. And a sign came up saying, if you don't pay me X amount of dollars, then you'll never get into your computer again. So it's been around for a long time. It's a lot more prevalent today, and it's a great way for people to make money. So if you're ever going to be a criminal, go into cybercrime. Few people get caught, few people get prosecuted, few people go to jail. It's really difficult to investigate. Geopolitical unrest, any of that going on right now? So we've got obviously Russia, Ukraine, we got Israel and Gaza. We've got all sorts of things happening geopolitically here in the United States with the new administration. We have no idea where that's going yet, but that I'm sure we'll have some fallout from that. We have all sorts of emerging technologies that are happening. So over the past number of years, cloud computing, artificial intelligence, all those different things, IoT, OT devices that are connected to the public internet. Just about anything that was a physical system has now a network component to it and now can be remotely accessed, whether it's water or it's gas, electric, all those different things. Everybody in here probably has a Ring doorbell. They probably have a Nest thermostat. They probably have an Alexa on their things so they can talk to it. I have none of those. I don't have a doorbell. I have a manual thermostat. I don't have Alexa. and you probably know why. So just keep in mind that everything that you're buying that's cheap probably has some vulnerability in it that somebody else can do. Systemic cyber risk, it's all over the place, okay? Everything is connected, which means that if something gets hacked, there are going to be cascading effects, not just within that organization, but also in their connected organizations, also municipalities globally and stuff like that. We see that. And the only path forward that I see is that we all work together. This is not a state government problem. It's not a federal government problem. It's a societal problem. It's where governments have to work with the private sector, the academic sector, individual citizens and residents to make sure that we are all working together to secure our stuff. And we'll talk more about that type of stuff as we go forward. I have this slide up here. It's common threats. All the threats are the same. Somebody gets a password, can log in. There's malware. There's all those different things. There's vulnerabilities in VPN systems, all those. But the impacts are different. So if you're a school system that has a VPN, it has a vulnerability that somebody gets into, yes, you may have a ransomware attack, and the kids will get a few days off. But that's the impact that you have. When you do that for a hospital, and we've had just about every major hospital system here in New Jersey hit with ransomware, it impacts patient care. So emergency rooms, they can't take in patients. Patients are diverted to other places. Operations are canceled or postponed. All those things happen when you go against critical infrastructure like that. When you do a water system, and this one's down in Muleshoe, Texas, obviously Russian threat actors got in there. That can have all sorts of problems. Back in September, we did a tabletop exercise with the cabinet members, what we call the Domestic Security Preparedness Task Force here in New Jersey, on attacks against water systems where the SCADA systems were hacked into. Too much chlorine was put into the water system. People got sick. People started overflowing hospitals, and then the hospitals were hit with ransomware as well. So what do? It's not just a cyber problem. These are public health, these are public safety, all sorts of problems. So those cyber effects can have kinetic effects, just like we've seen. We've seen, if you had a driver's license in Louisiana, you were hit with an attack not 2 years ago. But all these different things, the voter registration system in Georgia was hit as well. These are the hospitals that got hit. We've seen this all over the place. Capitol Health. One of the things that we do in the NJCCIC is we look for any indicators that somebody may attack you, or you have a vulnerability that makes you obviously vulnerable to attack. And then when we find it, we notify you in advance and say, hey, you've got this vulnerability. You should patch it because bad actors are exploiting that vulnerability. I can tell you one of the hospital systems here didn't pay attention to our notification. I can tell you one of the county governments in New Jersey that was hit with ransomware didn't pay attention. A municipality didn't pay attention. So when we do call you, or CISO calls you, or the FBI calls you, take it seriously. We've got insight into what threat actors do and what they're targeting, and you won't have that same type of insight. So when you do get a call from us that says, patch this system or change this password, you should probably do those types of things. And we've seen this, play out over and over and over again. And it kills me. All right, with that, gulp, which is, how many in here drink water? How many drink out of the water fountain? The tap, this is bottled water that you gave me back there. So, one of the things that we've seen, recent water attacks. We've got over 400 municipal water systems here in New Jersey. Okay, those municipal water systems are being attacked day and night, every single day of the year. Over the past year, we've seen all sorts of attacks. This one is related to the Israel and Gaza thing, where Palestinian hackers, actually Iran aligned hackers, hacked into Unitronic systems because they were Israeli systems. This was actually in Pennsylvania that this was hacked into. But any one of those that was connected to the public internet, they would hack into, and if you've been hacked, every equipment made in Israel is a target. So when I talk about geopolitical unrest, it's affecting physical systems as well. Operational technologies, I mentioned Muleshoot, Texas, Oakland, California, happened here in New Jersey as well. If you've ever driven down the road, you've probably seen those water tanks, okay? And you've probably seen the ground tanks. And just, a little bit about it. This is not the water department here. This is cybersecurity, data science and stuff. But, you have a pump house. That pump is a well that goes into the ground. Obviously, the water comes up, comes into the filtration system. I'll show you next, the aerator. It gets put into these tanks, and there is a level, okay, that's measured, so make sure you don't have too much water in there. And then there's overflow valves, and you can see the overflow here that would go in. This is a real one in New Jersey. Inside, you would see all the filtration stuff, the water treatment, and things of that nature. And then you would see that now everybody is moving from those old manual valves where you would change the flow or the pressure or how much was in the tank to what are called SCADA systems, supervisory control and data access, just another acronym. In that SCADA system, you have something called a programmable logic controller. That's going to control all those valves that used to go in there and turn, manually. You would have Wi-Fi, which is because these are remote. These are not in, municipal buildings most of the time. And then you would have a human-machine interface. It's like an iPad or an iPhone, where you just press buttons and stuff like that. So that's been great as more and more municipalities and water systems are upgrading their old manual systems to computer access systems, SCADA systems, because those water operators, when an alarm goes off, they don't now have to drive down to the water facility, the treatment plant, which may take 20, 30 minutes. Instead, they can sit on their couch while they're watching football, and they can simply log in, okay, and then turn off the alarms, change those types of things. But that means they're connected to the public internet, and they're discoverable by bad actors as well. And those bad actors can be, halfway around the world, whether it's in China, Russia, Iran, any place like that. And if they don't have good password policies and they didn't secure them, which most of them aren't secure because we've now taken, I hate to say this, plumbers, okay, and given them technology for convenience, but we never thought about the security of the technology that we're providing. So there's multiple water operators, plumbers, if you will, that do manage these water systems. They all share the same password, and the password has to be easy to remember so they can remotely log in. So we get that all the time. These are all the different programmable logic controllers that are accessible on the public internet, just here in New Jersey. Not all of them. This is just some of them. And you can see the severity of security here, high. You can see where they're located. You can see their IP addresses. Not real hard to log into. Not real hard to find. And we can map these out and we notify these people when we can. A lot of these IP addresses just come back to one of those MiFi, Verizon, MiFi routers that you get, which only comes back to Verizon. And without a subpoena, which you need, you can't get that information. So trying to identify them is tough to do in a lot of cases because they're remote. And you can see on the map where some of these are and located and stuff. They're not all water systems. In fact, when we started notifying some of these folks about the water systems that were connected, we knew they were PLCs. We could identify some of them. Water systems are not just municipal water systems. Some of them are coffee houses. They have their own water systems and PLCs. Others are those breweries that we see all over New Jersey. So instead of calling the breweries, my staff wanted to go visit the breweries to tell them in person. That's how caring that we are. So you can see all those that are out there. I mentioned default passwords. When you set up one of those PLCs and HMIs, they come with default passwords that you're supposed to change. The default password is 111111, 6 ones. The user admin, all these are off the internet now. We notified them as well. Some of them were here in New Jersey. They had been hacked. Russian threat actors were in the systems, and we notified them as well. But this is the default password that the engineering company that's installing these put up there. The water operators, the plumbers, are not going to change their easy to remember password, because during the football game they just have to hit 6 ones and they're in. And then they can change anything that they wanted to. These are some of the attacks, because the bad actors, when they do hack in, they record themselves and what they're doing. Some of these are water systems, some of these are energy systems. One of the groups is called the Cyber Army of Russia Reborn. This one is in Indiana, Tipton wastewater treatment plant. This is some of the stuff that we do in the NJCCIC, is we monitor these underground forums, Telegram channels, Discord, dark web and stuff like that, so we can identify them and then notify, if we can notify the owner of the system. It may be an energy company in Texas, or we can notify Texas authorities or the FBI or CISO to notify them on our behalf. But you can see they can just go in and change all those numbers just like you would on an iPad or an iPhone. That's that HMI, and that's the remote access you get by 111111. So it's a really big problem across the United States, because you can do so many bad things. In New Jersey, we had one that was hacked. The only thing that they really did was turn on the water pumps so high that it was overflowing. They turned off the alarms. The only reason the municipality noticed is because one of the workers was driving by the water tower and saw all sorts of water, pouring out into the street. They had no idea they were hacked. But that's what happens when you're there. Some of these, especially when you're talking about boilers and stuff like that, you can explode them, and you have all sorts of other problems. Sandworm, some of the Telegram, anybody on Telegram here? Or use Telegram? It's like a chat program, if you will, that you can, different groups out there. A lot of threat actors were using it for quite some time. They're moving away from it because Telegram is now starting to cooperate with authorities on these types of things. But some of the personas out there, Cyber Army of Russia Reborn, CAR is what they were called. They would also evolve into Z-Pen Test and some of the others. They have great graphic artists in their programs because they have cool logos and stuff like that. But they would put this out there, and anybody could see the ones that they were targeting. That's how we find it. And the videos and stuff are out there. And the reason they do this is the same reason a terrorism attack scares the daylights out of people. It's terrorism, if you will. If you knew that a bad actor was in your water system, you would be terrorized. Would you drink the water? Could it be contaminated? All those things would come into play. And that's the reason they do that. The Cyber Army of Russia Reborn is also connected with the Russian GRU, which is an intelligence service, if you will. The Russian GRU is the one that hacks into the energy grid over in Ukraine. They hacked into the Democratic National Committee here in the United States. They've hacked into just about every place. So these are the, I guess, apprentices, if you will. So they get tasked by the GRU to go out and show the GRU what they can do, and then they get hired. It's kind of like an internship or an apprenticeship. So we see that happening more and more, where it's not just those intelligence services or the military groups that are doing it. We actually see hacktivist groups and other groups that are being tasked by the military and the intelligence services. All right, water security, on to election security. We had a pretty big election back in November. My group is responsible for election security in New Jersey. So on election day, we have 3,400 voting locations, polling locations, if you will. Each one of those has at least one Cradle Point router in there connected to the internet, not for the voting systems, not where you cast your vote, but for the e-poll books to make sure that you didn't vote at a different location at a different time as well. So when you go in to vote, how many have voted in here? Wow. Okay. So if you go in to vote, you have to sign in and say, I'm Mike Geraghty. They're going to look you up on the computer and they say, okay. And then you sign your name and stuff. And that says, Mike Geraghty came here to vote. All right. We have something called early voting in New Jersey. And you can go to a bunch of different locations in your county to vote. But what has to happen is if I go to Union County College to vote, which is my location, that Union County College system has to communicate with all the other systems in Union County to say, Mike Geraghty was here. The voting booth is not connected to the public internet. You cannot hack into that remotely, but we're on that. So we got a couple of different websites that we're responsible for, general election stuff that you can go to the Secretary of State's office and you can see that. You can also track your ballot if you mail it in that way, going through that. And as you say, register the vote, polling locations, track my ballot, all those different things. Again, I'm responsible for all the security here. And then during election time, and as you can see, the run up to election, we had early voting. We can see all the hits and all the attacks against those sites. Again, we're responsible for that. So you would see, leading up, not too much happening. First day of early voting, we saw a big spike in not only attacks against the two different sites, but you could also see the blocks and stuff like that. And then as we got to election day, we saw a lot more. And you can see where they're coming from. Argentina was the #1 country that attacked us at that time. Doesn't mean the Argentinians hate us. It just means that they have computer systems that somebody probably used as a proxy to hack into us. We see it from United States. Singapore is another one. They have great infrastructure there, so bad actors, whether you're China, Russia, or any place else, they're going to use that infrastructure as proxies to hack into us. So while it seems pretty neat that we can identify the location, that's just the location of the computers, not the location of the people. So again, all this data that we collect is really interesting because it gives us a lot of insight into what's happening. And the visualizations, which is part of data science, is really important for us. So collecting this data, whether it's from Telegram, whether it's from election security stuff, whether it's from any of our other systems, is really important for us. The big thing that, the biggest threat that you've probably heard of over the past few months, 5 months, a year or so, is China's threat to the US and critical infrastructure and key resources. The reason for that is over a decade old. President Xi, of China, he wants, I hate to say it, make China great again. You've heard make America great again. His campaign back in 2011, 2012 was make China great again. China being the greatest political power, military power, the economy, the culture, the technology. He wants China to be #1. And that's been part of the Chinese strategy since there, including moral stature, right? So over the past few years, you've seen reclamation of disputed land in the South China Sea, where they're taking that, they're building, land in the South China Sea and stuff. There's something called the Belt and Road Initiative. It's a redux of the Silk Road. So if you think the Silk Road, the trading routes, but the Belt and Road Initiative is building infrastructure in all sorts of other countries, not just in the Asia-Pacific region, but also in Africa, in South America. If you notice when President Trump came into power back in January, there was a big kerfuffle about the Panama Canal. because China wanted to own the ports along the Panama Canal. That would be a national security threat if U.S. ships and other allied ships couldn't get through. So that's why the U.S. got involved in that. So that Belt and Road Initiative is not cyber, okay, but it's all leading up to China being the world power. Then there's also the question of Taiwan and the reunification of Taiwan. And so China military, the PLA, is supposed to be preparing for an invasion of Taiwan by 2027. That's only, 16 months, 17, 18 months away, not too long, to be ready to invade Taiwan. So there's lots of physical stuff going on, as I mentioned, South China Sea. But now you hear these terms, Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and there's so many other typhoons. I just put an N typhoon there, where hacking into critical infrastructure, energy systems, water systems, transportation systems, all sorts of systems in the United States are being done for the purposes of just having access, preparing the battlefield, if you will, in the event that China does go and invade Taiwan, that the U.S. will be obstructed from coming to be able to help Taiwan. So that's the whole purpose of this, all these Volt Typhoons, Salt Typhoons, and other things. So we could see, just in New Jersey, and we had this, I think everybody knows about the TikTok problem, where any company in China has to cooperate with the government and turn over whatever data and access that they want. You don't need a warrant like you do here in the United States. So TikTok was a big issue, but we also have Huawei, we have Hikvision, we have all sorts of cameras that are out there. And if you go around Newark, you can see all those surveillance cameras that are out there. You look to see who the manufacturer is. Hikvision is a really good camera. It's cheap, but it also provides remote access from China. We have a lot of law enforcement agencies in New Jersey that bought Hikvision cameras and Dahua cameras, not knowing because they had different labeling on it and stuff. So we can just search for these, and you can see they're located all over the place, up in the Newark area, Jersey City area. Any place that I have green, we can find those cameras, which means they can be accessed at any time they want. Go back to the Israel-Gaza issue, okay? A lot of the targeting of targets, if you will, was by hacking into camera systems and seeing whether the police, the military, or civilians were there to be able to target those locations. So that's something that not only the Palestinians did, but also those, the Israelis did on the other side and stuff. These can be used for the same purpose if we want. We have the World Cup here in 2026, obviously up in that whole Bergen County, Meadowlands area. That's an issue, although we don't have any intelligence that says the World Cup poses any threat. This came up this morning when I read the news. The Office of the Controller of the Currency was hacked, and I brought this up, and I just brought this up. Once they determined they were hacked, they began analyzing the compromised emails, okay? And it says that they hired the data scientists. They brought in 2 data scientists to assist with it. I might have, using internal data science experts and independent third parties to do it. So you want to know where data science plays a role, is analyzing all that data that comes in. This was another Chinese hacking group that hacked the Treasury not too long ago. Another one of the typhoon groups, if you will. And also, if you've been watching any of the hearings over the past year or so, Director Easterly of CISO, you had Director Wray of the FBI talking about Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon, and all the other typhoons, and how, they've compromised IT environments of communications, energy, transportation, water and wastewater systems, pre-positioning themselves, not going in there to do a ransomware attack, but just sitting there, okay? And nobody notices that they're there. In fact, a town up in Massachusetts, just about 3 weeks ago, Littleton, Massachusetts, the water and electric company up there, noticed that Chinese hackers had been in their systems for the last 10 months, just sitting there in the event that that was going to be a target later on. So pre-positioning, if you will. All right, so enough of the geopolitical things. Now you know why I don't sleep at night. Some of the other stuff that we go, yay, NJIT, you're number one, right? So we harvest from the dark web and all sorts of paste sites compromised credentials. So Mike Geraghty at njit.edu, your password, okay? John Doe at njit.edu, your password. We do that for every public sector organization in New Jersey. We do it for all the hospital systems, the water systems and stuff. And when we find the passwords, we notify those organizations and say, hey, Mike Geraghty's username and password is out there on the dark web. You probably want to have him change it. You probably want to see if his account's been compromised already. And then you also want to tell him to use multi-factor authentication so that they can't do that. So just in 2025, the top domain, njit.edu. Doesn't mean that they have access into NJIT systems. Probably do. I mentioned that you've probably been hacked already. But what it means is you've got a lot of kids in NJIT that are gamers, that probably downloaded cheat codes, what they thought were cheat codes, that have malware in them. Or they may have downloaded an extension for their browser or something of that nature that has malware in there. That malware is called stealer malware. And that stealer malware steals all the passwords that you save in your browser. Username, password, the URL that gets into. It even steals the cookies that allow them to impersonate you when you go in there. So we do all these notifications. We started it back in 2020. And the reason we started in 2020 is because it was at the height of COVID. And all the hospitals were being overrun with COVID patients. We wanted to make sure, because we know compromised credentials are the number one way to hack a system. Why hack a system when you can simply log in with somebody's credentials? We wanted to make sure they weren't going to get hit with ransomware attacks, which would really degrade their ability to serve patients and do all sorts of patient care. So we've been doing this for a while. As you can see, just in 2025, education sector's number one. They've been number one forever. It's not just NJIT, Kane University, Rutgers, TCNJ, yay, all the universities here. You guys are horrible with your passwords, horrible with your cybersecurity on your personal devices. And like I said, it doesn't mean that they're in NJIT systems, but you probably signed up for your LinkedIn account using an NJIT email account, probably signed up for your Steam account and all these other accounts, your bank account, okay, your OnlyFans account, all those accounts out there, they have access to them. Okay, and they can be used. And when we look at these, we find, I don't know, I didn't have it, the common passwords that are used across, all right? College students, as smart as you guys are, okay, still use password and still use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as your password. They're the most common passwords that are out there. But like I said, you don't have to hack into systems. You don't have to exploit a vulnerability. You don't have to be a super hacker. Just go online and you can find people's passwords and now log into their accounts as them. Your Gmail, your Facebook, your Snapchat, all of those are in there. And it's amazing. We've done 120,000 notifications since 2020. That's a lot of people whose accounts are compromised. Now, if you use multi-factor authentication, yay. If you're not using multi-factor authentication, that's the number one thing, first thing you should do when you leave here. Because if they have your password, that's one thing, but they'll never have your MFA token. So make sure that's something that you take. As you can see, 2024, we did 28,000 notifications. We're only in April and we're at 26,000 notifications. We'll probably beat that record next month in May, and it's not even half a year that this has been happening. So all these notifications, she's going to change her passwords. And you can see the different counties. We do all these different notifications. It's horrible. Some of the other things, I mentioned we do the executive branch for New Jersey, all those departments and agencies, 71 agencies, 24 major departments. We've also ventured into providing cybersecurity services, endpoint detection response, managed detection response for local governments, colleges, universities, community colleges, water systems and stuff. We're now doing it for 151 state and local government organizations in New Jersey, not counting the executive branch. So your towns we may be protecting that now. Your school system, we may be protecting it. And we got almost 55,000 endpoints, computer systems, servers, those things that are being printed. And it gives us that visibility. So when we talk about big data, we could see all the activity on those endpoints, indicia of ransomware, that we're not only just seeing, but we're preventing, we're blocking. So 173 different ransomware attacks. They may not have been successful if they kept going, but they couldn't get beyond what we were detecting on. All right, so that's the threat assessment. That's all the things that we're doing on the threat side. The next side is, we're going to talk about the NJCCIC approach to cybersecurity and why I say cyber is just a big data problem or a data science problem. And it's funny, we have one kid who was with us for about 3 years that got really into the data science aspect of it, machine learning, AI. And he said, wow, how come I didn't study this in college? So now he's down at Johns Hopkins. He's getting a master's degree in data science and cybersecurity. And he texted me the other day, he says, Mr. Geraghty, this textbook that we're reading, it cites you. I said, yeah, you didn't have to pay $180,000 for a master's degree. You could have just stayed with us and learned from not the people that wrote the book, but the people that the book's about. So our approach is different. I mentioned, there are a lot of different approaches to cybersecurity. Those that are focused on compliance with regulators and the laws. So if you're a financial services firm, you're regulated to death. If you're an energy company, you're regulated to death. You have all these regulators, and you become a compliance person where you're just checking boxes to make sure that you have this in place, you have that in place. So when you get audited by the regulators, you can say you do that. And that's what they call cybersecurity. They also have the technical people that go after cybersecurity. These are people that came up from the network side or doing tech stuff. And they see cybersecurity as a technology problem. So if I throw a firewall at it, if I throw antivirus at it, I'm protected because I've used technology. We don't see it that way. My background, I was with the state police a long, long time ago. But even before that, I taught math and physics and chemistry in a high school here in New Jersey. Hated kids, so that's why I became a state trooper. But then I hated kids that didn't pay attention in class, so pay attention. So I became a state trooper, had that background, and read a book back in 1989 called The Cuckoo's Egg, which led me to a career in computer security, cybersecurity, whatever you want to call it today. And we started the first state-level computer crime unit in the country at the state level. So our approach is looking at it not only from all the technical side, the compliance side, but also the threat actor side. And it's a human problem, if you will. How many have watched an episode of Law & Order in here? That's all? It's almost as few people as voted. Law & Order is a television show. It's been on for quite some time. The first half hour, the NYPD investigates a crime. The second half hour, the district attorney's office prosecutes the crime. So Jack McCoy has been the district attorney, the assistant district attorney. And they always say that in order to prosecute and convict somebody, you need three things. You need to prove means. He had the means to commit the crime. He was motivated to commit the crime, and he had the opportunity to commit the crime. That's how we boil down cybersecurity. That's our framework. Doesn't have to be more complicated than this. We don't control the means. Whether it's the Chinese PLA, the Russian GRU, a ransomware group, or even just a kid in his basement here in New Jersey, we have no idea what their means are, okay? And we're never going to control them. We don't know what their motivation is. In a lot of cases, it's going to be financial. It may be nation-state actors that are strategic and political, military type things. It may be hacktivist groups like we saw with the water systems and the Israeli Unitronics PLCs and things of that nature. So all sorts of motivations. I can't control who likes us, hates us, what they're going to do, what they're looking for. But we can control the opportunity that we provide them. So by making sure everybody has multi-factor authentication, making sure that there's all sorts of that, security awareness training, making sure we have firewalls, antivirus, all those different things, that limits the opportunity, okay? If you leave your keys in the car when you go to the mall and the window's down and the motor on, you're presenting the opportunity to all sorts of bad actors to do that. But if you take your keys with you, you lock the car, roll up the windows, under the lighted area, all those different things that you would do, you reduce the opportunity for a bad actor to steal your car, do those bad things. Same thing with cybersecurity. If we can reduce the opportunity, we're less of a target because there's so many other easy targets out there. I mentioned all those passwords that are out there. Those are easy targets. And that's what we're finding is about 80% of the hacks that we see are somebody's passwords being used to log into a system. And it's really difficult to identify that a bad actor is using somebody's credentials because they just look like an authorized user for the system. So when you talk about all this, you don't have to be a brain surgeon to be able to hack into systems. If you can log in, you're going to log in. And that's what all the threat actors are doing, whether it's the lowest level or it's the most sophisticated threat actors. They're going to take the easiest route, just like anyone in here would. So it's a psychological problem. It's a human problem. It's a different way of thinking, not only at the attacker side, but also on the human nature side. How many in here have the same password for multiple systems they log into? Okay, everybody raise your hands or you're lying. That one I know, because we all do. That's human nature. You're going to use the same password across your Facebook, Instagram, and all those different accounts that you have out there. That's human nature. We know that. Bad actors know that. So they may even take your password and start trying it on all sorts of other things, doing what we call password spraying attacks. We see that all the time as well. All right. How many know who Simon Pierre Laplace is?
The scientist?
The mathematician, the philosopher, the physicist. Okay, Laplace's demon. So this is one of the things that motivated me about threat intelligence, data science, and collecting all that data. So Laplace's demon basically said that if he knew everything that was happening in the past and everything that's going to happen in the future, okay, he would know everything about everything, right? And the Laplace's demon would go crazy trying to do that. So, everything is connected, basically, and it's called scientific determinism. We would be able to know everything about everything if we had all that information. He did a lot of other things, but this is, the one thing that I hung my hat on as far as Laplace is concerned. All right, first principles. How many know what first principles are? What
are first principles?
Yeah.
The basic mechanisms of the universe, I guess.
Basic, yeah. So when we think of Isaac Newton, okay, first principles. If we think of Einstein, first principles. We think of Richard Feynman, my favorite physicist, first principles. They all use first principles, basic math, science, all those different things, the principles of the earth. Elon Musk, forget Doge. He uses first principles for all his space stuff and stuff like that. And I thought it was a cool picture, so I keep it there. But first principles is how we think about how we do cybersecurity. So we got the human aspect of it from the attacker and the victim perspective, or the target perspective. We have trying to know everything about everything perspective, which is, when we go back to my first slide, only being able to see a sliver of the moon based on the information we have from the vantage point we have, to what we want to do is use all those tools to collect all that data. Don't think of it as a cybersecurity problem. It's a math problem. It's a physics problem. It's a data science, computer science problem. So cybersecurity is a data science project. I am a logaholic. I don't go to logaholic meetings. I like logs and look at them all the time. It's what made me a pretty good detective when I was in the state police, and what makes us a pretty good cybersecurity group now that I'm at the state of New Jersey. So we have about 167,000 assets under management. When I say assets, these are firewalls, these are servers, these are other endpoints. Those are assets. It's not all the people. There's another 167,000 or so. I mentioned 71 state agencies, 51 local governments. We ingest 26 billion security events per day on average. 26 billion. So if you go to a state website and you click on a link there, we're logging that. We don't know if you're a bad actor or not. Our systems are going to tell us whether it is legitimate, authorized use, or it's somebody to hack into us, just like we saw with the election systems before. Yes?
Size, like when you have 26 billion, like in terms of data, what do you store? Like
3.5 petabytes under management per year.
Where do you store all that?
It's called the cloud. Yes.
Someone else's problem.
What that?
Someone else's problem.
So, Google. So when you think about big data, you think about Google. So when we thought about doing this project, we said, all right, we want to collect all this data. We want all the visibility, okay? Laplace's demon. And we want to put it somewhere. If I tried to do that on-prem to manage those servers, my entire team is going to be focused on infrastructure rather than focused on cybersecurity. So Google, they have all the data in the world. Let's put it up in Google. We'll be able to search at the speed of Google, and we won't have to manage the infrastructure. They'll do it for us. So that was one reason for going. It's not I guess an advertisement for Google. I'm not endorsing them or anything. It just made sense. That's where we could, and the pricing made sense as well as far as what we could do. And so that was my dream for quite some time. So yeah, 26 billion events, okay, 9.5 trillion per year. We get about 11.4 million attacks daily, okay, that we're blocking. And there's stuff in here that we don't really understand, so we've got to do about 50 investigations per week. So we're talking about big data. As I said, there's 3.5 petabytes, and where that data comes from is everything. So VPN, this is all those things. I want to know everything about the world, election systems, any of our websites, okay? All the logins that people do when they log in, you wake up in the morning, you log in when you go to work, all those things. When you badge in to get on campus or get in the building, all that stuff goes in there. So we got tons and tons of data, the stuff from the dark web that goes in there. When somebody calls us and they say, hey, we got hacked, and we get these calls all the time. In fact, the police department called us earlier. That goes into another system, and that's all in our Google environment. So we have data from not just the attacks that are coming in, but all sorts of other things, risk assessments that we do, vulnerabilities that are out there. That's not something that most cybersecurity organizations have. They have them in silos where they can't track across all of them. And that's really our advantage here. So we use something, Google Cloud, obviously. Google SecOps is our SIM, okay? It's a Security Information Event Management System. That's the things, alerts, we can respond to them, we can see things happening on there. Google BigQuery is what we call our data warehouse, or it's first our data lake. And if you think of a data lake, when you think of a lake, you got goldfish down here, you got bass down there. They're not organized. We then take all that unorganized data, okay, all those fishes, and put them in a warehouse so that we know, all the goldfish are here, all the bass, the trout, all those different things are in those different places. And then our visualization tool and our machine learning tool, if you will, BigQuery and Looker, okay? So this is our big data environment, or our data science environment, if you will. How many are data science people in here? What's the hardest part about data science?
Cleaning.
Cleaning the data, yes. Cleaning the data so that when you actually do the analysis, you have some integrity of the data and stuff like that. So about 80% of the time is building and maintaining our pipelines for all those different systems that we get events from. That's not the funnest part of data science. So that's probably the most unfun. Or it's not even a word, but whatever. But we have all this stuff. So what happens here? Our journey to the cloud, the reason for it, Vince, is scale and performance. We can ingest everything in the Google Cloud, and we can get the performance that we need. Yeah?
What kind of cleaning problem do you have when you collect this data?
So a lot of the APIs that we use, they don't bring in the data cleanly. There may be spaces, and just like CSV files, where they're not structured correctly. So it's coming not just at scale, but not just batch, but it's coming to us in a stream. And sometimes when there's a network hiccup or some other hiccup along the way, those are the problems that we have with cleaning. We have about 120 different pipelines that our data engineers have built and they maintain right now, including students that graduated here. Computer science students. They weren't even data science. They don't become data science people until they come to me and I say, well, now you're doing data science. And that's how we do this. So we got a call from a threat intelligence company called Mandiant. You've probably heard of them if you're into cybersecurity. And they said, hey, Mike, one of our analysts just saw on a Russian-speaking forum that somebody was selling access into New Jersey state government systems. I said, can you tell us a little bit more about it? No, we don't have any more information. So what happened is all 65,000 users had to change their passwords. Now think about doing that for all state government employees, getting them to change their passwords, domain administrator passwords, service account passwords, because we had no idea what system it was. Went to another threat intelligence company that I knew the CEO of, and said, listen, we got this report on a Russian forum. I don't speak Russian. Nobody on my team speaks Russian. We don't even know what forum it is. Can you go find it? An hour later, they found it. And they said, this is the screenshot that we have. And this is what the bad actor used to prove he had access into New Jersey state government. Which, okay, that was great. And you can see the screenshot. Anybody know what NL test does? No IT majors in here, right? Just data science. Okay, NL test is a command in Windows that you would run to enumerate all the domains that you have access to, right? So NL test, okay, domain trust, okay, so you can access, and I redacted this so you can't see it. I don't want to embarrass people, but you can see all those different domains that now that bad actor had access into, right? So what can we do with that? All right, we did know the department that this happened in, but even better, we had our BigQuery environment. And I knew somebody ran NL test, and anytime you run a command or click off a process, we log that. So within 15 seconds, we could find the user who did NL test, okay, came back to that department, right? Obviously, her password was stolen. The bad actor had logged in using her that department. This is real bad cybersecurity. When you were a new employee for that department, they gave you your computer, they gave you a username, and they gave you a password 7, okay? But they never required any of their users to change that password. So anybody who had been hired in the last 6 years had the same password. Made it real easy for the bad actor to do that. But again, having all that data, the data science allows you not only the big data, look at the big picture, but also zero in on the little stuff. A single instance of an executable, which was really big for us. We could see that the bad actor, when he logged in, first thing they do, ping Google. Why? What does ping do?
Connection network.
Checks to see if there's a connection. Checks to see if they can get out of our network to the internet so that they can then exfiltrate data out, right? NS lookup, see if they can get to Skype, okay? This is a few years ago, obviously. NL test, ping, that IP address is where they wanted to exfiltrate the data out to. So just by having this data, nobody else could do this. I'm not going to say nobody else. There are probably other organizations, but there's no state government or local government or college in New Jersey that can do that at that scale, at that speed. So the scale and performance, big data. And you're going to need something. I know you guys have the high performance computing systems here. There's also the Google Cloud. You guys can manage your HPCs. We didn't want to manage ours. A few years ago, there was something called SolarWinds. Russian actors hacked into SolarWinds, changed the update so that anybody that downloaded the update on their systems could have been hacked if they had time for it. So on December 11th at about 7 p.m., it was a Sunday night, Kevin Mandia did an update because they found out Mandiant, the security company, had been hacked by the SolarWinds executable, the update. And what he did is he gave out the SHA-256 hash. What we could do, again, 15 seconds or less, we could take that hash value and search across all our computers to see if that binary was anywhere on our systems. Again, now we're taking big picture stuff. We found that we had 2 servers within the environment that had the bad update. Lucky for us, that Russian threat actors were more interested in the U.S. Department of Treasury and other U.S. government. They didn't get down to state governments yet. So we were able to remediate that. But again, scale, performance, those types of things that our journey to the cloud, if you will. And we could see DHS, which was the same one that had the password issue. So they're not a great place. All right, the other thing, detection as code. So I talk about computer science students rather than cybersecurity students. Obviously, Python is probably the most popular and most well-used. We didn't want technologies where they just alert us on the signatures that those technology companies created. We wanted to build our own code and our own detection. So we do that. Obviously, it's Python or Yara, and it allows us to do all the different things here. One of the things that we can do is multiple order events across multiple systems. When we think of detections, we usually think the antivirus alert, the firewall alert, this alert, but that doesn't always alert. What we wanted to do is track across all the different systems to be able to detect those issues. So again, being able to do that and using code to do that, we need really smart programmers, computer science people that understand cybersecurity. I can explain what we want to do. I went to Baylor University a long, long time ago. 1980 was the first time I ever saw a computer. It was a VAX 11780. Some people may know what that is. It wasn't punch cards. I'm not that old, although I could have used the one that had punch cards as well. But I had to do a program in Fortran 77. I'd never seen a computer in my life. 23 lines of code. 21 of them had syntax errors. I am not a programmer or a coder, okay? I hire people to do that. I worked at Bell Labs, and I had to build my own network intrusion detection system, my own SIM environment, which is basically a bunch of Perl scripts, and I named it uber.pl because whenever I ran it, it was the most inefficient code. The lights would dim in the building because it would take up all the energy. So I'm not a coder, okay? But I do know how bad actors work, and I do know how computers work. So reconnaissance, just like you're going to rob a bank, you're going to go around the corner a few times, see where the guards are, whether the cops are around, make sure there's no cameras and stuff. Bad actors do this online all the time. Then they're going to weaponize an email or something, send you that email with a phishing link or malware attachment. They deliver it. Once it's delivered, it exploits your systems. They gain command and control. They execute on their objectives, which is maybe stealing data and exfiltrating it, and then maintaining persistence so they can come back in anytime they want. So that's really the kill chain. What we want to do is identify it as far up the kill chain as possible. We don't want them to get in here, and that's where so this is why we do a lot of what we do is detection as code. Fraudulent websites, how many have a driver's license in here? That's all? Okay. I grew up in Jersey City. We didn't have driver's licenses either, so it's not uncommon. So this looks like the motor vehicle page where you can log in using your zip code, driver's license, social security number, except what's happening is bad actors, they are doing imposter pages. They're basically scraping your website and creating websites that look exactly like your bank website, government websites, things of that nature. This one happens to be state-nj-us.online. That's not a domain that we would use, okay? It's going to be nj.gov. So what happens is people would get a text saying that their driver's license is going to expire, or there's some other problem, it's been suspended, you need to log in. So when they log in, they put in driver's license, social security, and stuff like that. Guess who gets that? The bad actors. How do we detect these things? It's really difficult to detect because they're hosted over in Germany or the Netherlands or anywhere around the world. Simply scraping a website is really easy to do. It's really easy to fool people. So one of the things, and just understanding how the web and the internet works. I'm at home. Happens to be just a week or so ago, and I want to search on the NJCCIC, right? So it brings me up all the links. I'm in Google, says, okay, there's the NJCCIC homepage. I click on it, and I go to the NJCCIC homepage, 8:49 a.m., I'm here. I don't have that slow of a connection. I just didn't click on it right away, okay? What happens is when you come to our homepage or any website that we have for state government, and we have about 356 of them, we're logging that, okay? We're logging that. We have a web application firewall. We're going to log it. And we're going to see in that access log the date and time, the IP address that you came from, what referred you to us. You went to Google to get to us. So Google is the referrer. And then you got here. So why do we do that? Again, big data, lots of collection. Nobody can see the value in this when you talk to other states or other organizations. But what happens is when you went to this website, okay, you put your stuff in, they'd collect it, they'd give you an error message saying you made a mistake, and then they would refer you to the real page. So you'd have to log in. When you logged into the real page at MVC, you'd be none the wiser. You just think it's a technical glitch that you couldn't log in the first time. So what happens is we see coming from that referrer into our MVC systems, these are all the victim IP addresses that we have there. So what we can do is go back and say, okay, Mike Geraghty uses that IP address regularly to connect with New Jersey systems. Hey, you've been victimized, you do identity theft protection, all those different things. Again, big data. This is not something that you're going to get an alert on through antivirus or a network firewall. It's happening somewhere else. But if you're collecting the data and you know how the internet works and you know how applications work, you can find this stuff. But you first have to have the data. And that's why I say it's a big data problem. And so this is our fraudulent website, regex, if you will, to go and find all this type of stuff for the referrals. It's not something that you would normally see in Python code or YARA-L and stuff like that. Account takeover attacks. We see this all the time. Again, MVC, compromised accounts. I mentioned all those leaked passwords that are out there. Compromised accounts are all those different things. So somebody's logging in to that username's account, okay, using stolen passwords and stuff, leaked passwords that are out there. Enriched detections, again, detection as code. Just because you use MFA on your cell phone, okay, with SMS, that's easy to bypass now. Bad actors are doing it all the time. If you can use an authenticator app like Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, or use a hardware token, that's a much better way of doing it. But we can detect these where you're going to what you think is the right site. You're typing your username and password. It asks you for your SMS token. You put that in. You've got a man in the middle, basically, that's collecting that and logging in real quickly as you. Stealing your cookie in your session and stuff like that. So anomalous behavior, which is a big thing for data science, finding those anomalies, these low prevalence or uncommon commands. I mentioned NL test before. These are a whole bunch of other ones that we look for. Why would somebody try and cat the password file? Why would somebody do NS lookup for a system? These are not something that normal users do. They're something maybe a network or a system administrator would do. But why would you ping a number, okay, an IP address? That's not something people normally do on computer systems. They open Microsoft Word, they do Outlook, they visit the web, those types of things. But when you drop down to the command prompt and you start doing those, we collect all that and we alert on it because it's something that we need to look into because it's uncommon, probably shouldn't happen. All right, so other things, data science here, reporting, visualizations. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Same thing here. We have a statewide threat grid where we have 16 counties in New Jersey. We have network intrusion detection systems, in front of their networks and stuff. We can see where they are, everything that's happening, and we can build a report that's easy to do now that we have the data. Now that those pipelines are actually pumping the data in correctly, now we can do all sorts of visualizations and reporting. Threat activity from geopolitical hotspots. This was big a while ago, especially when Russia, invaded Ukraine. So we can see any of those geopolitical hotspots, what's happening, on our systems from those hotspots in the last week, the last day, over the last, daily trend, whatever, the timeline is. We can see China, Iran, Belarus. Those were, really places that we look at because we get attacks from them all the time. So we're always looking to see what's happening there. Giving these reports to senior executives gives them a picture. They don't have to understand it. They just want to know what's happening. So these are big. And again, having the data and being able to do that. Machine learning on GCP. Some of it is built in. So I talked about BigQuery, which is our data warehouse. They have pre-trained models. BQML, Looker ML. So we can do all sorts of pre-trained models, natural language processing. We had a case, I'm in Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness. So we do terrorism investigations, not our group, but there's another group that does that. Turkish group that speaks Turkish. Anybody in here speak Turkish? We have somebody. Where were you when we needed you? Okay, so all the video chats, okay, and everything, and all the communications back and forth was Turkish. We didn't have anybody. But Google can not only translate, it can also print out everything you want. So rather than having a translator there to sit and listen and then type out, we can actually use our AI for this and Vertex AI. So it helps, so all this stuff happens. So machine learning models that are built into BigQuery, BQML, if you will. I think everybody should be familiar with linear and logistic regression, k-means, all those different ones. We can use any of these on our data to find things. And we've been doing a number of different projects doing just that. We can create and train our models to do things. Here we're looking for email. And we can evaluate the model. We can make a prediction with the model and say, okay, this is what we get. And I think we're about 76% accurate using this model and this approach that we had. But we can simply change the parameters anytime that we want to make it even better. Same thing here. These were anomalies for domain-generated algorithms, which are really weird-looking domains that you would see, typically hosting malware and stuff like that. So we can identify them. We could look at the accuracy, again, 75%, 76% or so. Natural language processing. Now we have all that data, but not everybody is a data scientist that's going to go in and build their own models. So what we do is, for the layperson, if you will, or the less technical analysts that we have, security analysts, they can simply ask the questions, okay? What are the top 10 most common incident types for incidents created in the last 90 days, broken down by organization type? And we can see what those are. So we can do natural language processing with all that. Again, this is data science, machine learning. This is math. This is, all those first principles, if you will. It's just being applied to cybersecurity. You'll see some of this available on our website, so other people, it's not just a chatbot. I hate chatbots. That's not really AI. That's just putting a wrapper in front of an AI model or a machine learning model. So my earlier one was the whole of the moon, and it was just a sliver we could only see. As we collect more and more data, we get closer to Laplace's demon, okay, to know everything about everything. And we can do lots of things, but you need that data. You need to be able to ingest, clean it, process, analyze it. And so that's what we've been doing in the NJCCIC. And that's why I say this is a big data problem. It's a data science problem. Petabytes of data that we can go through. Our biggest problem with getting to the moon, or the whole of the moon, is that we have a team that's responsible for doing cybersecurity. We started a team, we call it the Data Operations Analysis and Intelligence Team. Do AI is the team, but it's only 4 people. And they have other parts of work that they have to do. So they got to maintain those pipelines. They also have to investigate some of these things. So we're not to the point where we have a team of data scientists that are doing this all the time, that can apply the machine learning models. I don't want to say it's research, but there's a lot of test and evaluation that has to be done for that. We're going to get there someday. But where we've come in the last 3 years on this journey is pretty far. I think it's further. I talked to all the other states and cities and stuff like that. We're much further along than just about anybody else in that field. In fact, last year, Google had me come out to their Google Next conference, which is actually going on now, and speak about how we do this with all these different systems and stuff. So, any questions?
Wasn't I right? Wasn't this an amazing talk?
It is.
I had the question after I heard you last time, and I think you answered it already. How do you sleep at night?
So, this is the truth. I go to bed about 8 o'clock, but I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And that's the quiet time for me where I get to actually do things. I sleep like a baby because I'm exhausted from the day. So it's I sleep well. I can't stay up any longer.
Okay.
What is the most difficult problem you faced, like doing?
So in state government, the most difficult problem is hiring personnel and procurement, because it's so much bureaucracy that you go through. This is the easy stuff. It's the bureaucracy that is the hardest stuff. And we try and be as agile as possible. Nobody knows what we're doing. Trying to explain this to bureaucrats, it doesn't mean anything. And they just nod their head. When I can go to MVC or to the Treasury Department and say, hey, we just saved you, $25 million, they'll, okay, just go do what you want. So, but
when you get hacked, they listen to you.
when they get hacked, there's something called minimization. Or blaming others, and so they do listen to us, but they won't admit they were wrong. So yeah.
We have a question from online asking just how can data science help? How data science can help you?
So all those things, I said we've got petabytes of data. We have infrastructure. And we've got all sorts of tools that we can use. It's finding data scientists that want to work on these problems, whether they're projects or they come work for us, those types of things.
So you asked about who voted or didn't vote, and you were disappointed. Well, a lot of people here are not.
I know that too, but that doesn't stop people from voting.
We couldn't vote even if we wanted to vote. But that's a question that I get from my students all the time. I'm on a visa. Could I get a job? Well, not specifically with your department, but many other departments related to that. So what's specific?
And so the sad answer is no, we can't hire non-citizens. I'm the head judge for the capstone project for computer science with Dr. El-Jabari. I get to go around and I judge all those projects. And there are brilliant students here and there. We do the capture the flag thing. And I see talent all over the place, and I want to hire them. Unfortunately, in the Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, we can't hire people that are not citizens or not on a green card, at least. So I'm more disappointed than probably you that I can't hire you.
Green card is okay?
Green card's okay.
Okay, that makes it easier.
A little bit, yes. How many have a green card? You do, okay.
Chase, you had a question?
Yeah, one quick question. So I noticed that most of the examples you give us are actually in Windows machines, right? Those commands in Windows.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is that did you choose to do so for this presentation only, or in general, Windows are more vulnerable than other systems?
Windows are more popular. Okay, Windows runs on lots of hardware. I see a Mac. I actually use a Mac too. And most of the people within the cybersecurity unit use Macs. But Windows are what most of the world, it's like 80% of the world uses Windows machines. Some use, maybe 5 or 10% use Macs, and then there's Linux boxes and stuff. So if you're a bad actor, what are you going to target? Okay. Windows machines, because they're most prevalent. Why are you going to write malware for a Mac when your target is only that small? Okay, whereas for Windows the targets are that big.
That makes sense.
Well, I'm usually religious about time, but when do we ever get such a speaker? So, more questions.
Just curious, is that saying your priority is on the Windows system or?
No, we do everything. So government, we have Unix systems, Linux systems. Obviously, we're in the cloud and cloud workloads and up in Amazon or whether Google or Azure and stuff like that. So we're operating system agnostic, if you will. We protect everything.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, well then, thank you again.
Thank you.